I know this vehicle is a little dated, but its design and stunning architecture are undeniable. Honestly, this is a car brand I've wanted to talk about for some time. And while the cars that Horatio Pagani produces are ridiculously awesome, I didn't know much about them myself. I asked, why don't we see them here in the States very often or hear much about them in the exotic car scene? Well, there's a reason for that. Actually, there are two reasons for that. One of them makes sense, but the other, well, I probably have a hard time with it as well. I'll explain what I mean in just a minute. Let's get into the absolutely gorgeous Pagani Zonda. Pagani Automobili was founded by Horatio Pagani in 1992, after working for Renault and Lamborghini of all places. During his time at Lamborghini, Horatio became extremely interested in the use of composites in vehicles, specifically carbon fiber. He purchased an autoclave with his own money to come up with solutions to tackle weight and structural rigidity issues with the Lamborghinis being produced at the time, like the LM and the Diablo. Unimpressed with the idea of using carbon fiber as well as deeming the process too complicated, Lamborghini balked at the technology. Leaving Lamborghini in '91, Horatio already had plans for building his own supercar, a car designated simply as the C8 Project. No relation. For over 6 years, Horatio was self-funding his dream, developing and testing his car, and procuring the engine that would power it. A mid-mounted V12 produced by the AMG division of Mercedes-Benz. Unveiled for the first time at the 1999 Geneva Motor Show, the Zonda C12 was something to behold. The C8 project was now named after the Zonda, a hot, dry wind that blows from the Andes Mountains over the Argentine Pampas in Horatio's native country. Horatio believed that not only should each car be built to perfection, use the finest materials, and perform perfectly, they also had to be works of art. The Zonda C12 was initially powered by the 6-liter AMG V12, which surprisingly only produced around 450 horsepower. Not exactly a number to get excited over. However, the C12 would still hit 60 in 3.9 seconds thanks to its overall weight of only 2,700 pounds. The next iteration of the C12 would be the Zonda S7.0, essentially the same car with a few minor changes, but this one now had a 7-liter V12, putting down 100 more horses, around 547. 16 of these were produced. In 2002, the Zonda S7.3 was unveiled. If you guessed it had a bigger 7.3-liter engine, you would be correct. This larger engine didn't have a power increase, however, though it did now rev to 7,000 RPM. As a side note, does anyone else think the Saline S7 has some very similar body lines to the original Zondas? When looking at this car, it makes me think of the Saline for some reason. Moving on from here, I'm only going to talk about a few of the more notable Zondas. One of the things that Pagani hasn't done very well, in my opinion, is simplify the names of the different bespoke Zondas they've produced. In 2005, the Zonda F was released. The F stood for Fangio, or rather Juan Manuel Fangio. He was a 5-time Argentinian Formula One champion and friend of Horatio's who died in 1995. The Zonda F got a very well-conceived facelift, with a slightly longer and sharper front end as well as curvier and wider rear wheel arches. The F had an even more aggressive, yet graceful stance than before. This iteration of the Zonda was now offered in the open-top roadster configuration as well. It also now had a V12 that made nearly 600 horses. Moving on to the next version of the Zonda, though, these cars are so unique and absolutely mental to look at, it's really hard to tell what the differences are between each version. That brings us to the Zonda Cinque. Released in 2009, the Cinque is a road-going version of the track-only Zonda R. Seriously, spend about 5 minutes trying to get all the names and versions straight and in some sort of chronology, and you'll probably jump in front of a bus just for a change of pace. Seriously. The Cinque comes with a new AMG V12, but now cranks out 669 horses. It uses their newly developed material carbon titanium fiber for most of its exterior elements, which is stronger and lighter than traditional carbon fiber. The most notable change to the Cinque is the large roof scoop right on top of the cockpit that feeds fresh air directly into the engine intake. All of that being said, this thing will cover 0 to 60 in 3.1 seconds and hit 109.5. Only 5 versions of the coupe, as well as 5 of the roadsters, were ever produced. The last Zonda we'll talk about in this video is the 2012 Zonda 760 RS. This monster takes another big step forward in the power department and is really the starting point for the next tier of the Zonda. Based on the track-only Zonda R, a wicked machine that openly makes fun of corners, the 760 RS was developed to allow the driver the same raw, powerful driving experience, but could also be a daily driver. Wildly enough, the road legal RS puts out more power than its track-only counterpart, 760 horses to the R's 739. Mated to the 7.3-liter AMG V12 was the new 7-speed automatic manual gearbox, allowing for faster shifts, quicker acceleration, and an even higher top-end speed. In fact, the performance is so on-demand and raw, the Zonda has become known as La Bestia, or the Beast, in Pagani circle of enthusiasts, and it's easy to see why. One look at the Beast and you instantly know it lives up to its nickname. The 760 RS looks like something Batman would drive. It's even more aggressive looking than the previous Zonda F. From the canards on the front quarter, the brake cooling inlets on the rear quarters, and the more aggressive rear wing with its now dorsal fin-like arrow right behind the spine-mounted air intake, this car is designed to perform at the highest levels and look really, really good while doing it. Not only does it look sick, it sounds amazing. With its center-mounted quad exhaust hooked up to a V12 that will now rev up to 7,500 RPM, it screams. Probably better than the LFA in my opinion. I love the LFA, I'm not hating, just keeping it real. As gorgeous as the Zonda looks on the outside, it looks equally as stunning on the inside. The interior has so much polished metal switches and knobs, it looks like something out of an airplane built in the 40s. That's really the only way I can think to describe it. There is not a ton in the way of creature comforts inside of Pagani in general, and that's done on purpose. Horatio designs his vehicles to be, especially the interiors, to be working works of art. To do the things a hypercar is supposed to do without all the fluff of screens and overly complicated electronics. Decked out in carbon fiber and machined aluminum, the seats and even parts of the dash and doors interiors are covered in beautifully bolstered patterns and stitching. Every one of these machines is unique in the most exquisitely detailed ways possible. Oh, and I nearly forgot to mention, taking a long weekend trip is quite practical in the Zonda, as each one comes with custom luggage designed specifically to fit in the car. So back to my original question, why aren't there many Paganis, let alone Zondas, in the United States? There's 2 reasons, and the first one is simple: supply and demand. By hand building every car and prioritizing quality over quantity, they create exclusivity. This means they can produce a very well-built vehicle that customers want while still remaining quite rare. Pagani has a wait list of customers willing to pay the hefty sum for the chance to own what is pretty much a one-off car. And when I say hefty sum, we're talking a couple mil to upwards of $17.5 million. With only a little over 140 total Zondas ever built, it's easy to see why their value would continue to rise year after year. As for the second reason of my question, the Zonda was illegal in the States. Though as of last year, it's not. Let me explain. For a vehicle to be road legal, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration requires that production cars are subjected to crash testing to make sure they meet certain standards. Although in the late 90s, the first Zonda only cost about $280,000, that was a large cost that Pagani didn't want to have to shell out when they hadn't even sold a car yet. The crash testing was never completed. But can you really fault Pagani for that? These cars are beautiful, even considered works of art to many, including Horatio, and I just don't think he was too keen on building them to crash them, and I can't blame him for that. And so they never got a rating, and, well, the Zonda was never sold in the US. However, few Zondas did make it to the States and could be driven under the show or display exemption. Under this exemption, they can be driven up to 2,500 miles per year. The other loophole is that vehicles that are 25 years old can now be imported and made road legal. So if you have one of the first Zondas ever built stashed away overseas somewhere, it can now legally be driven in America, and I want to ride in it. I personally think all Paganis just completely look like they are out of this world. Horatio Pagani has truly created a beautiful blend of precision, machine, and modern art. Unless you are ridiculously wealthy, the Pagani brand is one of those that is probably out of reach for all but the upper echelon of car enthusiasts. I am not ultra rich, and therefore the Zonda will just have to be thrown into a dream bucket list for me. The Zonda and Pagani vehicles as a whole are absolutely stunning and so rare, it's very doubtful that you will ever see one in person. I do know this, if you do actually catch sight of one, it's doubtful you'll know what the correct version of the Zonda it is. That I'm almost certain of. Thanks for being here. My name is Jason, and I really appreciate you checking out the video. Drop me a comment, let me know what you think of the Zonda. Do me a favor, hit subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and drop me a like. I would really, truly, greatly appreciate that. That's it for this one. Stay safe, take care of each other, and enjoy the ride. Peace.
Jump in the ride and burn out the rims, don't stop, don't touch the void I'm in. Rock with the up for events, skin kept close to you, plotting on them with the tits on 10. Back in the back, that's on tap, all ready to go and jump in. Gotta keep it real in the ends, never leave crib where the ends. Me and that kid, we don't even need to pretend.